I made a really bold prediction, and I became Twitter famous from that.
She's formerly worked for DOGE.
So when I announced on Twitter I was going to go to DC, DOGE found me there and recruited me because they know I was a highly trained tech person that was sympathetic. I felt like I've always had the knowledge that I felt like I've always known that there was going to be a huge evil coming. I've always known that this big storm will come for me and my family, everything. I've always known it's coming. And the only way to get through is to keep preaching the Bible, to keep throwing the stones at the storm. And then God will send people to protect me. And that's what's happened. I threw God's word into the evil, and I have been protected, and I will continue.
I love that answer. I agree with that. Who's the most corrupt individual you've come across?
One person that showed up that most people don't talk about enough.
Welcome to another episode of Ideas Have Consequences with me, Larry Alex Taunton, and it is my pleasure to have with me on today's show Yenica Pounds, otherwise known as DataRepublican. And we have here data interpreter, Terrell.
Hi, I'm Terrell.
Great to have both of you with me. We've spent the last couple of days just kind of having fun around Layla, around my home, watching trees getting cut down, looking at the beauty of the lake, seeing storms, southern storms, sweep in off the lake, enjoying coffee, good food. But now we're going to have a serious conversation. And Data, you have rocketed to stardom in a reasonably short period of time. And I became aware of you after I was swatted. You see, when you're swatted, you're invited to join a little group of people who have all been swatted. They reach out to you. They bring you into the fold. We're all on a little bit of a chat together on Twitter, on X. And Data was part of that. And I got to see her work. I got to see what she was doing. I was absolutely blown away, in part because her work is so alien to my own skill sets. It's just not the kind of thing that I have any ability to do whatsoever. And her ability as a data engineer to ferret out information, specifically what has really fascinated me, to ferret out where money is going in relation to DOGE. You know, you've become kind of the secret weapon, I will say, of the Republican Party, because there are some elements of the Republican Party I'm sure don't like you very much. But I will say the secret weapon of the America First, of MAGA agenda, of DOGE, and of the President of the United States. It is great to have you two with us.
Thank you, Larry. It's very humbling. And what we've been discussing today has been very interesting conversation. I wanted to tell you last week, we had the LA riots. We had the No Kings protests. And now we're finally starting to understand that what happened here was not only government waste, but also it was also part of a much bigger and a much uglier picture. It's very deep. So I would actually like to ask you a question first. We already know that USAID has been funneling people from South America up to America through Mexico and other countries as well. You mentioned that that's only part of the story. the 90% picture part.
Is it how these countries can
How do these countries actually become destabilized in the first place so that all of these people want to come here? Can you speak more about that? This was a fascinating conversation we had earlier.
We've had a great time sitting on the porch and just talking last night, sitting and chatting about these very things. And as I prepare to answer that, let me say something to the audience that relates to this. I feel like Data's work, Jenica's work, is so complementary to my own because I'm boots on the ground. I'm in the weeds, actually seeing what the money is doing, how it's actually affecting lives, how the policies are affecting lives. And you're working at another level, digging, into the webosphere, the nether world, finding all of this stuff that I have found incredibly helpful in giving me insight into, okay, this couples well with what I'm seeing. I think she's provided me with a piece that I didn't previously have. What is happening with these countries, Jenica, is that, CNN reported and others that these migrants, and I really should say they're illegal aliens, but not just in the United States, they're illegal in every country they pass through. No country wants them. So if you're from Venezuela, the moment you go through the trochas into, the illegal pathways into Colombia, you're illegal. They don't want you in Colombia. They say, America's that way. Keep going. You have to go through cartel country. You pass through Darien into Panama. The Panamanians say, go that way. And they just keep going until they're in Mexico. And then they either get sent back or they somehow manage to make it across the border. But USAID has been helping them all along the way. And the reason these people are fleeing isn't due to climate change, as has been, claimed, but it's due to the fact that these regimes are being toppled due to Marxist overthrows. And what's fascinating is, Americans are very aware of the election shenanigans, that took place in 2020. But what I've been seeing in South America and other parts of the world is those same kinds of tactics were being used elsewhere. So Honduras fell to Marxists, Peru fell to Marxists, Chile, the most stable democracy in South America, fell to Marxists, Brazil fell to Marxists, Colombia fell to Marxists, and of course we all know that that Venezuela did, more than a decade ago. So I think it's Marxism that's causing these people to flee because it's cratering the economies. They can't feed their families. They no longer have jobs. You're talking to people who will tell you that they worked, let's say, as a taxi driver, and his wife was an at-home mom, and they had 4 kids, and he could support them with his job. And then as the economy started tanking, she had to get a job. And then they had to get extra jobs. Then they began skipping meals so that their children could eat. And then they finally got to a place where they realized we have to leave the country because we're starving and our children have no future. So I think that's what's happening.
Yes, but we also have a lot of money, for example. If you look at NED, the National Endowment for Democracy, that money has just been growing and we've been investing into it constantly. And the goal of the NED is to stop the spread of communism, allegedly, right?
Yeah.
So why then? So why is our government not stopping that?
Well, America's influence is very Jekyll and Hyde, and meaning it depends on the administration. So let's say the Trump administration is very different from the Biden administration, the Obama administration. The Reagan administration is very different from the Clinton administration. So you have good Dr. Jekyll, and then you have evil Mr. Hyde. And that's why our influence around the world is quite uneven. You see some places where America's influence has been wonderful, where, real democracy has been established, say with Japan. But then you also have parts of the world where America's influence has been so pernicious, so evil. And I think that's what I encountered, when I was in Cairo with USAID there, where it felt to me that this was a forward operating outpost for Hamas and the CIA to run ops against Israel. So I think that's part of it. But I also think that we have to be very, and this, we have to be very wary of the window front that these NGOs provide, because they're fake much of the time. So does USAID do some good? Sure they do. They know they have to. So some members of their staff are young idealist sorts who have no idea what USAID is really up to. And those are the ones who are sent out to hand out rice and grain to poor people and to, begin to teach local people how to, to do small scale, farming and provide health care and this sort of stuff. But that's just a little bit of what USAID is doing. And they're what shall I say? They're marketing to the American people, such as with NED. The marketing suggests that they're really doing good things. But the truth of the matter is that they're doing some really, really evil stuff. And they want that money to keep flowing. They want the American people. Listen, USAID's banner, and even me as a colorblind person can see this. It's USAID. And if I'm not mistaken, again, I am colorblind, but the US, I believe, is blue and the AID is red. So they're stressing it's US aid. And then their slogan is from the American people. So the American people have always been under the impression that they're doing good things for people in the third world, not knowing that this is an organization that's out destabilizing governments.
So, this, I don't know. This, the USA.
So you mentioned that you had some parts of USAID that you don't have access to like I do. How can I help you?
Well, this is getting to the fun part right here. But let's back up just a bit. Tell us your story, how did you end up here in this place? How did this happen?
Oh, well, to be honest, I don't even know myself.
I became Twitter.
I got Twitter famous and
I quit it as a prediction.
On accurate election predictions.
I was predicting.
You had everybody predicting that Harris was going to win. But the early data from the early votes were telling me something completely different. So I made a really bold prediction. And I became Twitter famous from that. I just made a lot of maps and things. I build tools, And anyway, it's a long story, but I was tired of the business world. I was tired of politics in the business world and in my field. So I wanted to take a break. And I decided to instead take a leave of absence and see how far I could go with Twitter, with X, to see how far I could go. I would do random things for analysis. And then with the LA wildfire, remember Elizabeth Warren and how she was trying to get donations through Actable? Act Blue, forgive me. Act Blue, forgive me. How Elizabeth Warren was trying to get donations through Act Blue. That's the first time I remember when people started asking me, hey, you looked in the charities, so what do the nonprofits do? So I thought, that's interesting. So I started analyzing where the money went with there. And I estimate that for every dollar that's donated to the LA wildfires, only around 60 cents actually went to the victims.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. I traced it. A lot of nonprofits. The first Act Blue, at first Act Blue takes money, and then the United Way takes money, and then after that, it just trickles down the chain. They all take a little bit as it passes through their hands. And that's when people first became really interested in the nonprofits. And that's when Elon Musk started following me because he thought it was interesting. When Trump became inaugurated, I went to DC. And the DOGE people found me there and recruited me. They heard I was going to be in town and they found me.
So she's formally worked for DOGE.
No, actually. The way that they were doing it was, Trump had a problem with betrayal the first time. So his top priority was to find people who would not betray him. But how do you find a coder? All of the tech world is very liberal, as you know. So when I announced on Twitter I was going to go to DC, DOGE found me there and recruited me because they know I was a highly trained tech person that was sympathetic. But then the process of getting the job at DOGE was so long. They blocked me. They blocked me too. They were telling me as the interpreter that they didn't want me to go with. They couldn't afford me, things like that, which is absolutely a lie. So I decided finally around like April or May that and they told me if you work for DOGE, then you can't be on Twitter, you can't be on X. So I decided, you know what? I would be more efficient outside of DC than inside DOGE. I had a feeling that I could do more outside than in.
Well, what you've been doing has been really remarkable. And we'll have some other interesting conversations over coffee and such about how you might actually help me find more of this USAID money. But did you see, as I'm sure you did, in February, Elon Musk had announced that they essentially discovered that $4.7 trillion was missing from the U.S. Treasury. Where's it going?
I think the point is that they're missing money. Like, why are they missing money? $4.7 trillion? $1 trillion is a lot of money. We spend every year around $20,000 for each man, woman, or child. So if your family has 4 people living in the house, that's $80,000 a year, right? That's about as much as a normal house income. So you have to ask yourself, are we really getting the value for that money? Do you see $80,000 working for you? That's a living for many families, $80,000. But it's not happening. Living is becoming worse and worse, destabilizing people, just like some of the people you were talking about in Venezuela.
Yeah, and discovering where this money is going is causing some people to panic. You've received threats, haven't you?
Yes. Yes, I have received threats.
And how has that affected you?
Well, when I was doxxed, it was right at the peak of when people hated DOGE. Everybody hated DOGE.
Yeah, of course.
They were lighting Teslas on fire and all of that.
It was sort of like a trip.
The Salt Lake Tribune, in fact, published in the paper that said that the DataRepublican Husbands has a distillery right here in town. I got so many hateful emails. 4,000 emails at one point, just hate. But my husband has nothing to do with this, so I was really upset. But his old coworkers from Nora set up some kind of Reddit thread, and they said, "Oh, I work for him. I hate him." And it was all a lie. They set up this whole Reddit thread just to discredit my husband. It hurt him so much to see his old coworkers trash him in public like that and betray him. And he did nothing. He's just married to me. My children took off and went to Florida for 6 weeks. And then we felt safe enough and things were calming down. And they were homeschooled during that time. So it affected my whole life. And then I went back to Utah finally. And literally the next day after I got home, we started having the pizza doxing and all the pizzas were sent to us. Ugh.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, it sucks. And that was 2 days. So we left again because, oh my gosh, I guess we couldn't come back. So we left home again for a week. And since then, it's actually been pretty good. And I'm just decided we're going to stop. I want to live at home. We're going to stay here. I'm sick of being scared out of my home.
So it hasn't stopped you?
Yes. Most recently, we've had threatening emails last week. Yeah, those were bad. From the same address that Brianna posted. So we're trying to figure that out.
Who formerly of Fox News. I did an interview with her, I don't know, maybe a couple of months ago, but maybe we'll have Brianna on the show sometime. But if you don't follow her on Twitter, you can. She's part of our little group. And for people who don't know, in this line of work, particularly if you're a conservative, you should expect to get threats. Now, not necessarily if you're just kind of pandering onto people, but when you're addressing issues like, say, I do, like Islam, or you're going after the alphabet mafia, or you're going after money in this case, there are people who will threaten you. And the kinds of threats are sometimes, they're extreme. A threat that I saw yesterday from there's a little group of us. Jenica's a part of it. I'm a part of it. It's a group you don't want to join, but once you're there, you're glad you're there. And that we call ourselves the swatted. The swatted. We're all people who've been swatted or received these kinds of threats. And yesterday, a member of that group shared with us that he had received a threat saying that they were going to cut him up into little pieces and force feed his body to his family. This is the kind of stuff that people will say. Jenica, you're a brave woman. You're a brave woman. And I also want to say this at this moment. Terrell is really an important piece of this entire puzzle. The two of them together are really quite remarkable. She does more than just interpret for her. She's an important part of what the two of them do together. They're best friends. And so that you will also know, she doesn't wear the sunglasses just simply to be cool, though she is cool. But she's highly sensitive to light. And she also falls into the rare category of deafness in that she is totally deaf. So that has, very profoundly affected her life. Where are you going next? What is the next, what does the rest of this summer look like for you in terms of your research projects?
I would say, honestly, what we discussed today changed my perspective completely, Larry, on a lot of things. Yes, that. And I would love to understand the big picture of what happens in the world. I would love to understand the big picture. It's obviously much more evil and much bigger than just USAID money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to understand that. And what we talked about today was really eye-opening. But a specific goal that I have is I actually want to go to Budapest. And I want to research the early Soros documents and understand how involved our government was there in Budapest, or how involved he was with the government there in Budapest.
Well, George Soros, if you don't know, he's Hungarian. And Budapest is a place where there's a large repository of George Soros documents that she hopes to be able to get through and take a look at. Soros, I sometimes wonder, Jenica, if Soros isn't the shiny object, the boogeyman that we make out to be bigger than he really is. And by that, I don't mean that he's not evil. He is. He certainly, I think, in prior decades was a much bigger player than I think he is now. I mean, he's so old now. And his money is still out there doing things. But I think Soros was key towards creating sort of an enduring evil influence, because he's the one who kind of pioneered these methodologies, the movement of money and the use of money in destabilizing regimes. And I think they've discovered that these color revolutions that they were using in other parts of the world can be used domestically, that they could employ some of those same kinds of tactics here. He pretends to be a faithful student of his old professor, Karl Popper, who wrote, if you're not familiar with it, he wrote on this 2-volume work here. It's called The Open Society and Its Enemies. Karl Popper was a philosopher that I think that, most conservatives would probably read and agree with, 80+% of what he had to say. The devil is in the details. It's in those other 20% that you begin to find some of the bits that were problematic. But Popper wasn't an evil man. I think Popper was trying to navigate a world where he saw two monstrous ideologies, Marxism on one hand and fascism on the other, out to destroy the world. He was a product of World War II. And coming out of that, the open society philosophy was kind of his solution to try to navigate that. And he saw that any ideology that claimed to be the truth was one that should never be allowed to gain any kind of supremacy in a liberal democracy. And so he kind of recreated the pantheon in Western societies. That what it literally means, the hall of the gods is the Roman pantheon, where they affirmed everyone's truth is equally valid. And it's from that we get, of course, postmodernism, this idea that you have your truth and I have my truth. But the problem with that is that, of course, at the end of the day, what truth must all of us acknowledge as absolute? The state. Because the state does not allow you to say, well, you guys have your laws and I have my laws. The state goes, no, our laws are absolute. You will acknowledge our laws. And that is moving us further and further towards almost a worship of the state. In fact, I would say that the World Economic Forum is trying to nudge us in a direction where states are absolute in terms of their power. And you would know, of course, that how AI, brain chipping, surveillance states, all this stuff is being used to move us closer and closer to that. You were telling me over coffee that you are doing some work now on artificial intelligence. How much of a threat is that to humanity?
AI is not a problem. If you actually knew how AI works, It's just a way of transform. It's just a way of transforming a structure of data. You can't actually change the data, but you change the structure of it. For example, the Budapest trip I was talking about, where I want to go get these documents, they probably have a lot of they probably have a lot of handwritten old documents there in a Hungarian language, right? I don't speak Hungarian, but before it took a long time to research, translate, fix the documents because they're old. But with AI, we can actually scan the documents and translate them, and it translates them to English perfectly, quickly as well. And that's the kind of power that AI can give us. And always you need to double check with AI if you're doing a translation or whatever, because it's very important to make sure that it's accurate, because it is a machine and machines can make mistakes sometimes. But for this, it's very good.
But the artificial intelligence can be programmed with bias, yes?
Of course. For example, if you ask AI, did Soros work with NED? AI will say, oh no, of course not. That's a conspiracy theory. But we have paper evidence, we have numbers, we have proof that that has actually happened. The wrong way to think about AI is that it holds truth. It does not. It does not hold truth. It's just, it's an understanding domain. It understands language. It understands patterns. It understands structure. It doesn't understand facts. It doesn't understand personal information. And the problem is that everyone uses AI the wrong way to try to understand the truth, but that's not what AI is for. It's an organization tool.
That's actually a profound statement. That that people, because whenever I see people using it, probably what has subconsciously bothered me is that I see people using it to search for truth. That they see it as some kind of technological god, an oracle that
exactly
they go to seek truth from it, to pronounce on, is Yenica Pounds' tweet true, Grok? Is this true? So I want to emphasize that statement that you just said. It's not, how did you put it? It's not a repository of truth. Is that the way you put it?
Yes, that's correct.
I would say
it's a recognition domain. Let me give you an example here. Let's use the President George Bush for an example. Yeah, the second George Bush. They are named a different way. GWB, GHB, junior, senior, first, second. You know that there is a lot of differences. Even though they're both George Bush, people talk about that all the time. We know which Bush is the right Bush. In the past, it's been really hard to train the computer to recognize the difference between these two Bushes. You could give a computer a sentence and say, this sentence says, for example, George Bush Sr. promoted X, Y, and Z. Celebration or something like that. And you can ask the computer, which president are we talking about? Normally in the past, it would be really hard effort to have to train its own model to recognize the difference between the two Bushes. But with AI, because it recognizes a pattern, it understands the difference between the two. George Bush Sr. and George Bush Jr. Mm-hmm.
Would it be accurate to say, go ahead. Oh, would it be accurate to say that AI is a tool for organizing information?
Yes, because
All the rest of it.
it has all the information of the internet. It has access to the entire internet. It understands
The way that
information in a way that it recognizes patterns.
so
So yes, it's a way of organizing things.
I said, but I can't
So with the example I gave you,
get to the way that I
we get the right answer.
I said,
If I show the AI sentence, which presents are we talking about, we'll always get the right answer because it recognizes patterns.
Gotcha.
get to the way that
And it's because we get the right answer. And the only reason it recognizes that pattern is because we recognize that pattern. And it's the way that we speak as humans. We say the things like junior and senior. And that is how the AI learns the difference. It doesn't know the difference. It knows that we know the difference and it trusts us.
We'll figure that out. So the intelligence is actually truly artificial.
Yeah. Artificial intelligence. Yeah.
It just mimics intelligence. It's not actual intelligence.
Right. Can I tell a story? One time, and we can delete this if you hate it. One time I asked Jenica myself, I said, so, because I didn't understand completely a long time ago. I said, so, because I've been working with Jenica for almost 10 years now. So I said, so can AI really take over the world? And Jenica looked at me dead in the face and she said, no. And I said, why? And she said, because I have a fire hose. And I was like, what do you mean? And then she explained the whole thing to me, like AI can't become self-aware because it only knows, it doesn't have consciousness. It only knows what we teach it. So if AI started to behave stupid, we just turn it off.
And yet, when I was at the World Economic Forum, not this year, but last year, and as I was telling you when we were sitting on the porch, I just go and pretend to be one of them. So they tend to speak very freely with me. You hear things that don't make it into articles as a rule. And I'm talking to a professor from the University of Zurich who was there to advise governments on the use of AI. And he's telling me that he's alarmed that governments do not understand the potential of AI and none of them are pumping the brakes on it. And I said, well, give me an example of this. And he said, well, for example, this government is creating, my term, he didn't call it this, but a warrior robot. And he says, I've seen it. And he says, when it hunts you, it kills you. It always kills you. He says, you will never escape it. He says, I've watched it again and again and again. And he says, and these are things they're creating, not just for battlefield combat, but for use against domestic populations. I mean, when I think of AI in that kind of Terminator, kind of way, it does feel like AI has the potential for very lethal, dominant, application.
I mean, I guess in theory, you could build something that you could unleash against the people, but I feel like that's something you could do anyway without AI. You could have somebody remotely controlling that, like a military drone. It's the same thing. And again, I have a fire hose. If we wanted to hook up a camera to AI and you tell the AI, shoot when you see a person, yeah, of course it's dangerous and deadly. You could absolutely do that. If you program the AI to kill people, that's not the AI. That's whoever programmed the AI. That's not the AI itself.
Well, there are benign uses of it. For example, to stick with that analogy, I was recently looking at a demonstration of a security firm that their cameras use artificial intelligence. And so instead of their cameras being triggered, say every time a rabbit or a dog crosses its path, the camera is programmed to only be triggered when a human being enters
Right.
into it. And its ability to organize that information is quite amazing. They could say, show me every male who was wearing a red shirt, and it could pop that up for whatever you set the parameters, on that. Or you could even do things like say, show me every F-150 or Tesla that passed in front of the camera. It was pretty incredible. But you could also see a very pernicious potential use for technology like that. What makes you decide, just as a woman, because one of the most common questions that I'm asked, Jenica, is, what can I do? People ask me this all the time. What can I do? And I've been swatted. I've received many death threats. You have received loads of threats. Your husband as well, in his business, and we're going to advertise that business before the show is over. What makes you decide to carry on? Why not just say, you know what? I'm gonna use my considerable engineering skills, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to create, this benign technology where I make a fair amount of money off of this, and nobody can really criticize me for it because it's not particularly political. What makes you decide to keep going and say, no, I'm going to keep ferreting out and exposing this corruption?
Well, this is I can keep the good answer, or I can give it the truth.
I could give you the good answer or the truth.
I'm going to give it the truth.
I'm going to give you the truth, Larry.
Other than a Twitter. That is.
I've been on Twitter for 5 years now. I first became viral back in 2020. It was a much different time back then, amazingly.
People were scared of it.
People were scared of being canceled and all that. Cancel culture was at the peak back then in 2020. And I had just become a Christian, if I'm being honest with you. I was a very new Christian. And then... And I was in big tech. If you're a Christian in big tech, you essentially get canceled. It's an interesting culture. I had a conflict because I was saying I was proud for Jesus and I could be canceled. Or I could hide that I supported Jesus and lived my life and continue to work. But that's not what Jesus called me to. And I have to follow my calling. Definitely was a conflict. And then one morning, I had a dream. It was some kind of dream. I was going through a path, and the path was a fork, split in two ways. And I heard a voice tell me to pick one. And I realized that was the problem I was struggling with. Do I go with Jesus and potentially lose everything? Or do I stay with my course, continue working, and hide as a Christian? In my dream, my answer was, God, can't I have it both ways? I'm greedy. I want both. Can I have it both ways, God, please? And it said, you're going to choose the hard way. And then suddenly I found myself into an island. And in the distance, and everything that I loved was outside of the island. Oh, forgive me. On the island had my family and everything I loved. But outside the island, across the sea, there was a huge storm. A big storm, and it was coming for me. And if the storm came, it would destroy everything I loved that was on that island, and I knew it was coming. And what did I do? I started digging. And I found gemstones, diamonds, and rubies, and sapphires, and I started throwing the stones at the storm as if it was going to do something.
I went to the shore. There's
And I went to the shore, and there was thousands and thousands of palm trees on the shore, and they kept sprouting up, and they protect me, and they made me a wall and protected me from the storm.
a text. Was it weird?
It was a weird dream,
So
and I knew there was some kind of meaning to it. So when I woke up, I texted my pastor, and I said, "What does this mean? You know, I'm a new Christian. This is crazy." And my pastor said, "Gemstones and the treasure, those are God's words. It has that meaning in the Bible. Gemstones are God's words. The palm trees specifically are the men, good religious men, good holy men. And the storm, the evil bad men, or whatever, the badness." But my point is that I knew that whatever I did, I have to preach. All the trees were protecting me. And I didn't notice until much later, but that was the same day. That was the same day I met Joe's Easton, who became the DataRepublican.com. So that was the same day that I decided to start the DataRepublican.com. I felt like I've always had the knowledge that I felt like I've always known that there was going to be a huge evil coming. I've always known that this big storm will come for me and my family, everything. I've always known it's coming. And the only way to get through is to keep preaching the Bible, to keep throwing the stones at the storm. And then God will send people to protect me. And that's what's happened. I threw God's word into the evil, and I have been protected, and I will continue.
I love that answer. Does this translate? Does that translate? So what you're saying is that you have a mission. A calling.
It's not missing that because God needs me.
If it's my mission, it's not because God needs me.
It's not I look that the cake is.
It's my honor that God is acting through me, and I'm happy to serve.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. God doesn't need any one of us, but it is wonderful to be used by him for the things that we do. Jenica, I have friends who will say to me, "Why did you do what you were doing in Cairo? You almost got killed there. Why are you saying stuff where you're being swatted? You could get killed like that. Why do you go to the Middle East and cover the persecution of Christians there when you had to hide from Boko Haram? You could get killed there. Why would you be following these migrant caravans into cartel country, into the jungles? You could be killed there." And my answer to that is always, I have a mission, I have a calling, and I go where I believe the Lord has sent me. Maybe I don't get to fly we were joking that there are seaplanes that land very near my house, and I often tell Lori that I would like to learn how to fly a seaplane. And she says, I'm prepared to let you do the dangerous things that I know you're called to do. But I know God isn't calling you to fly a seaplane.
Understand.
What is the most outrageous thing that you've uncovered?
I get asked that question all the time.
I thought
It's just the general pattern. At first I thought, we found waste and we're going to fix it. And we found all this money. And Elon and DOGE thought the same thing, that we actually found where the leak is and things like that. But that waste is,
Except was about something.
it's that waste is part of something that's much darker. It's not just that. It's like the Leviathan we were talking about earlier. I didn't start thinking at the beginning that this Leviathan would happen, that it would be that crazy, and it's just snowballed.
Just gets bigger and bigger. I did start out trying to follow USAID. I was started out following, trying to understand the migrant crisis. And that led me to cartel country. And that led me to the jungles. And that led me to human trafficking. And then that led me to USAID. And that eventually led me to the World Economic Forum and then to the Middle East. And I saw that USAID is behind all of it. And now I want to know who's behind USAID. Who are those people behind USAID? What's going on with that? And how can we expose this huge, as we say, a Leviathan, an evil Leviathan that has tentacles into absolutely everything. You see, we think of USAID as monolithic. You know, Samantha Power runs it, or somebody like her. George Soros is calling the shots. I'm convinced that no single person is controlling USAID. In fact, I think there are competing interests. There are a lot of different things that are going on with USAID, but almost all of them fundamentally anti-American, and some of them anti-human. I mean, just the destruction, of people, the destruction of democracies, the things that are happening with that. You say something much more dark. Can you give us clarity on what you mean by that?
I think there's actually a bigger question now. And that's part of why I want to go to Budapest and get into those documents. Much of this is like what you said earlier. It's a disconnect between the ideas and the theories at the top and how they're actually applied to the people on the bottom. How do these theories actually affect people? And I want to figure out why we have that disconnect and how much of the big picture is engineered by that. All these people making policies at the top that don't affect them, but it affects everyone at the bottom. Is that the real big picture? Why does that happen? Or is there a lot of players? Is it one evil organization or person, or is it a group that does together? But it feels like the big picture is truly a Leviathan, but also it also looks like a lot of different players as well.
I agree with that. Who's the most corrupt individual you've come across?
Do you mean corrupt? The most corrupt. Let me think. One person that showed up that most people don't talk about enough. Annie Applebaum.
Really? The Atlantic? Is she
yes.
With the Atlantic?
Yep.
Yes, she is.
That's her. Yeah. Yeah. People don't talk about her enough. So do you remember when President Biden stood up and said, hey, 74 million MAGA Republicans are the actual threat to America. Do you remember that?
Yes.
There was 5 people behind that. And I think 2 of them worked for the NDI. And Applebaum was one of those that worked for the NDI. So she was one of 5 people that influenced Biden to give that speech and make those comments. So, it's also worked for the National Endowment for Democracy, the NED, because she was on the board for that. But also,
Back pains.
Mike Benz showed me the documents where she actually works for
British.
British intelligence.
So, I thought, so was she?
Who is she really? Who is she really loyal to? Where do her actual loyalties lie?
At the present pattern.
Is she a foreigner advising Biden, sitting on the NED board? Advising Biden to label 74 million Americans a threat against somebody? I don't like it.
Is she getting money through U.S. taxpayers? Is she being funded by the Biden administration or Soros or USAID? Was she getting money from one of those kinds of sources, NGOs?
My suspicion.
Yeah. Okay. Let's
At one level, you get your needs met in a different way, is my suspicion. For example, the NED. They have personal housing allocations. Who gets that? We don't even know who gets those personal housing allocations. They spent 25% of their budget on travel. And I feel like it's not like you get money to get rich, but it's more like if she wants something, she gets it. But that makes me suspicious. So it's not like this Annie Applebaum is getting paid a lot of money. It's more like she gets whatever she wants. It's suspicious. It's not, I don't like how it's set up.
Yeah, well, for sure. We just took a brief break. We're back again. And that's because I wanted to get a bottle of this whiskey right here. And the reason I wanted to is because I keep noticing when the camera is on me that the two of them keep passing a flask, of something that they have been drinking liberally from I'm joking. They haven't been doing that. But if they were, this is what they would be drinking. And this is made by Jenica's husband, Brent. He has a distillery. And I really want every member of the posse, whether you drink whiskey or not, I want all of you to buy it. You will recall earlier in the show, she was talking about the effort to cancel, not just her, but to cancel her husband's distillery, her husband's very honest career, his hard work. And that's just not the way conservatives operate, certainly not the way Christians operate. So buy some of this, send it to your friends, use it. If you don't drink, use it to clean your wounds. But whatever it is that you do with it, please buy it. And Jenica was kind enough to bring a bottle for me. She brought this all the way from Salt Lake City, Utah. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Is it good?
Of course it's good. Okay, wait. I'm going to jump in here really quick. It's amazing. Okay, that's our Umbriana finished whiskey. It has notes of marshmallow and vanilla, and it's absolutely beautiful bourbon if you want to have some
bourbon. Excuse me. Yeah, okay. So this is what we have, and where can they get it?
You can get it from the Spirits of the Wasatch Distillery, and I think you can order online now, right? Yes, you can absolutely order online. Wasatch.co.
What, spell that?
WASATCH.co.
So make sure that you do. Every member of the posse, go and buy some of this and support DataRepublican's incredible work. Yenica Pounds, her husband, Brent, what they're doing. Honest work, important work, incredible work. How did you land upon the name DataRepublican?
So originally I was called Joe is Done, but then after 2020, Joe was not yet done. Joe had more work to do, so I decided to change the name. I like data. I'm a Republican with a small r, so I decided to become DataRepublican. Republican in the sense that I support the Republic of this great country.
Yeah, and I think it's dangerous for any one of us to make our allegiances absolute, to any party. Insofar as, there are elements of the Republican Party that have really wandered far away from what it once meant to be a Republican. I can say that I'm very supportive of the Constitution. I'm a Christian and I believe the Bible, but to say that I'm a Republican no matter what is kind of dangerous. And I like the fact that you've avoided that. Your mom is a big fan of yours.
Oh yeah, she's a character for sure. We love Mom.
And your profile has risen as well in the midst of all this.
Yeah, it was interesting because I think at first everyone thought I was either fake or Chinese. That was the first problem. And many people were reporting my account because I'm the data interpreter. So please don't cancel me. I'm real. I'm the data interpreter.
And you're accompanying her on a lot of these trips. And
yes, I've been with Jenica for almost 10 years now. I think I said that. And, she said earlier, do you want the good answer or do you want the truth? And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to give you the truth. Before the DataRepublican, before I even knew that Jenica did any of this, we worked together in tech. And it took 2 days for me to decide that I would follow this woman anywhere in the world. Oh. So it doesn't matter. DataRepublican, mom, tech mogul, data scientist, I'll be right there.
So in addition to signing, you speak, 6 languages?
Yes, I speak several languages. I speak English, French, Spanish, German, American Sign Language, and a little bit of British Sign Language. Okay. I could be better. I would need to go over to the UK to practice more.
Yeah, and they've been educating me quite a lot as to what all is involved with sign language, because I confess I've been quite ignorant as it relates to this, but I'm fascinated as it relates to that particular subject. I think you tweeted that you're writing a book.
Yes, I am. I'm just happy to have it outside the system. We'll see how it goes.
May we ask what it's about?
It's like Hunger Games meets Percy Jackson. It's fantasy. It's a magic system.
Okay, so I love it. It's a fiction. It's a work of fiction.
Yeah. I probably won't publish it, but it's just something that I do to get out of myself, like I want to have something that's outside the system of my life that I can focus on that brings me joy. You need to publish it.
Well, you write very well on Twitter, so I have no reason to believe you won't be able to write a wonderful book. How can people support what you do?
The best way is through the $3 donation, the subscription. Of course, I don't want to stop people from giving me money. But I would prefer to build a broad base of many people supporting me through a small $3 donation. I'm not going to say no to huge money, but I would rather reach more people in America. Yeah, I'm not going to be held to any huge donor. I'm on my own mission, but I won't say no.
But how do they do it? Do they do it on Twitter? Do they do it? Is it Patreon? If say people here, if members of the posse,
through X,
our subscribers, if they want to support her, how do they do it? Practically, where do they go?
Well, through X, like I said, the best way is the $3 subscription through X. Okay. So subscribe to my channel. But I also, on the DataRepublican.com, where you can give a one-time donation or a subscribe donation. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, this has been another episode of Ideas Have Consequences with me, Larry Alex Taunton, and it has been a pleasure to have the two of you lovely ladies with us. I'm really looking forward to our conversation this evening as we begin to, really discuss strategy of how we demolish this darkness and this great evil that you've been talking about.
Perfect. We both have a mission, and we will do it.
Fantastic. By the whiskey.
Wait, Larry, go like this. Gotta go like this.
Oh, what does that
with
mean?
your thumb out. I love you.